Good afternoon, Volleyball Coaches of Canada. It is May 12th. We have our 1 p.m. session today with Shannon Winzer, the next-gen coach and former Australian national team coach. Shannon, thanks for joining us, and welcome to one of these sessions that we do on a weekly basis.
Thanks. I'm kind of excited. It's my turn.
Awesome. So again, I know you've checked into a lot of these and been a part of many of them prior to today. You know how this goes. There'll be a lot of questions from all different aspects of the sport. Can you give us a rundown of what you're all about, where you started, where you went, and now what you're doing?
Sure. Well, I'm obviously Canadian, but I haven't been in Canada for a long time. I graduated from UBC, where I played for Doug Reimer, and then I was off around the world. I played a little bit in England, and then I found myself in Australia, where I played for the national team there. When I finished playing, I started coaching in their national league, and had some early success there. Won 4 national championships with the University Blues in Melbourne. And from there, I got some work with the national team, and I worked with Mark Barnard, who was the head coach of Australia at the time, and did some assistant coaching with him and moved my way up into the head coaching role when he stood down. So I've spent a long time in Australia. I was the head coach for their national team for the 3 years, and I also started their full-time program, the Center of Excellence, at the Institute of Sport. And I had a couple more years left on my contract when I had an offer to come back to Canada and work with Team Canada. So I'm now in my current role with Team Canada. I'm the head coach of the Next Gen team, which is essentially our Senior B team. And I assist Tom with the Senior A team. And I'm about to launch the National Excellence Program, which is the full-time program for our grade 11 and 12s in Canada. So that's where I am now.
Awesome. Well, let's dig deep into this Next Gen program. When did it start? What's the purpose? Whose idea was it? How's it working out so far?
Yeah, well, last year was our first year. The men have always had or for as long as I know, has had a Senior B team. The Next Gen program, if you want to think of it, we think of it in Olympic quads. So my sole purpose is to identify and develop athletes who are 4 to 8 years from podium. So it's not an age range. It's really about how far are they from potentially being an Olympian. If they're 4 to 8 years out of that, then they work with me directly. And that can be, an 18-year-old. It could be a 25-year-old. It's not really an age range. So our Next Gen are really the athletes who we think have the potential to be 2024 Olympians and beyond. Obviously, we have some 2028s in there. And then obviously the National Excellence Program is looking at the next quad, the 2028 Olympians. So our Next Gen program, we train at the Olympic Oval in Richmond. We train alongside the A team. Obviously, I work across both teams, so we're very much aligned with what the A team's doing. We compete in last year we didn't have as much competition, meaning we took a mix of almost like an A2 team. Some players from the A team, some players from the B team, and went to things like the Pan Am Games, Norsika Challenger Cup, and then this year we had a lot on the cards in competitions, but they're mixed between invitational and competitions that maybe the A team isn't sending a full A squad to. We would send a team to.
Okay, now so how are the players identified? Are they identified through U Sport? Kids that go down, or young adults that go down to NCAA, how do people, get more information on this program so that we can create more depth so that, obviously we can get better results every year moving forward?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. This is really about creating depth. We are now working with 32 athletes in our gym. And previously we were working with maybe 18 athletes.
Right.
So to be identified, it's a year-long process. I am everywhere. So every athlete who's playing in the NCAA, guaranteed I've watched you on Volleymetrics. Okay. We have the running list of everyone who's playing in the NCAA. Obviously, ones who are playing in big conferences are probably first on my list to check out. Mm-hmm. I did a trip last year where I visited quite a few athletes playing in the Big Ten. And athletes playing who are in the area when I was visiting those. And I connect with athletes through email and phone. And then our youth sport athletes get out to as many local games as I can. Obviously, I live close by to Trinity and UBC, and so I see as many games as I can then. It's actually a lot harder than you think. And then as many, there's a lot of teams who use volumetrics in youth sport. So I'm once again online watching as many games as possible, reaching out to youth sport coaches, just saying, hey, like, what athletes do I need to know about? Who's in your gym? Just getting as much information as possible. And, you know, we were halfway through looking through the youth sport athletes when COVID hit.
Yeah.
I was on my way to the national championship. I actually ended up in Calgary. It got canceled while I was on my flight.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really connecting that way with coaches, with athletes, using our online as much as possible. And then we have an open trial at the start of May. We want to make sure as many athletes are there as possible. This is not a closed shop. We
Right.
want to see everyone who has potential to be a 2024 or 2028 Olympian.
So I got a question right off the start from the legend Doug Reimer. So he says, when you travel across the country for NEP, what were the primary selection criteria that is used?
Sure. So the program that Doug's referring to is our National Excellence Program, which is the one that's launching in September for high school age kids. Basically, the highest level athlete, who, you know, our priority athletes in that grade 11, 12 range.
Interesting. Okay.
We ran a series of identification camps across the country. So the first thing we're looking for is athleticism and physicality. Do they have the potential to be an international athlete? Do they have that physicality? That's not just how tall you are, it's how big you can play, how well you jump, your athleticism, how well you move. So really we're not looking at, you know, your actual outcomes of your skills. We're not looking at, you know, how many balls you can kill or how well you pass. We're actually looking at how well you move and how well you jump and how big you are. That's the first priority. And then probably the hardest thing that we're trying to determine is whether or not you have the work ethic to come to a full-time program, whether or not you want to learn, whether or not you're open to learning new skills, whether you have that, you know, that real internal drive, and that's really hard to figure out. I tell athletes that you can fool us for 4 hours, but you can't fool us for 4 months.
Right.
So we make it is a certain level of best guess when it comes to the character of an athlete and whether or not they have that work ethic. But we reach out to their coaches, we talk to people who've worked with them, we try and do our best to get a feel for whether or not they'd be a good fit.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's this NEP? Is this kind of a replacement of these Volleyball Canada Center of Excellence type of things? Or is this kind of like a full-time 4-month program in the summer? It's like going to summer camp for a grade 11 or 12 student where it's volleyball specific.
Yeah, I'm not fully across what the Center of Excellence used to look like, so I can't really comment on that. But this is not a summer program. In the summertime, I spend my full-time with the national team.
For sure. Duh.
So this is the program that runs from September to December. The athletes will move to Richmond. They'll live with homestay families, and they will do their studies online.
Interesting.
Through their home province. So it's very targeted.
Cool.
You know, in our very first year, we are looking for our top 16 athletes, and of our top 16 athletes, we had 15 accept, and then we had to go to, you know, our top 17 athletes.
Right.
The uptake was huge. Like, we are working with the best of the best right now, and I'm really excited to get going in September.
Yeah, it sounds like you know what, this is news to me, so I love this. This is a totally cool idea, and the Center of Excellence was kind of one of this kind of like stage kind of like hockey, where kids would like go play volleyball at like 6 o'clock in the morning before school for 2 hours, and then go to school and then be on their other school teams, and it was kind of a program like that. Some people
They still have the regional excellence program.
Yeah, okay.
Which I know there's one run in Richmond, and I believe, and they're run in different areas. And I know the one in Richmond's run at 6 in the morning or quite early.
Yeah.
And there's definitely like strength and conditioning, and each regional excellence program I believe is a little bit different.
Different, yeah, for sure.
Those are I would say a stage below what this is. So
Right.
I see this as maybe those athletes feeding into the National Excellence Program.
Yeah. Okay.
But we still have the Regional Excellence programs. It's just not my domain to probably talk too much about.
Sure. But let's dig into this a little bit more regarding the situation we're in with COVID and lack of funding potentially being an issue from parents and the National Association. Do you see that there'll be any change this year when things sort of get back to normal? I know you guys you said you were going to launch it in September. Will it maybe be put off a year or be pushed back into January 2021 type of thing?
There's no indication that it's going to be put back or changed at all at this stage. We're still just, expect to be starting on September 8th.
Yeah.
This program has been launched in partnership with all the provincial associations who are helping fund this program.
Cool.
They've been awesome partners, and I'm obviously not across where they're at financially, but
right.
At this stage we expect everything to go ahead. All the athletes are, being subsidized in some way by their provincial associations, and they also have access to grants.
Yeah.
So there's been no indication that at this stage that there's going to be an issue.
Cool. I think it's a great idea. So I wish you the best on this. That'll be exciting. I got a question from a young woman named Tatiana Markic. She plays down in Texas at an NAIA school. Her question is, what is your philosophy on passing? Are you more for out of body, angled arms, left is right, right is wrong, or are you more of a midline person? Good question.
I'm definitely not a midline person.
Okay.
I think that at the high levels, you are passing out of body all the time. And
right.
What we teach at the national team, we obviously teach the passing to our left, and that's exactly what we're teaching. We're not teaching midline. We are going to angle our platform, open up to the ball, angle our platform first, and only move our feet if we have to. But trust the angles. Trust your platform.
Awesome. Yeah, great answer. I might say your last name wrong. Sorry, Brad Dowes. During the 44-minute with Tom Black conversation, he talked about how Canada, as a smaller country, has an advantage to communicate faster and get everyone in line in teaching skills the same way. Do you have any insights into how Team Canada would like to do that? And are there certain areas of the game that you would prioritize? Good question.
It's a really good question. I think that was awesome comment by Tom too. Like I've never really thought about that as an advantage, but he's right. I think that if we can get our lines of communication going, like we have a much better advantage than the larger countries to gain on the same page. I think there's a few things that need to happen. I think our coaching education needs to be in line with what we're asking from the national team. Mm-hmm. I think that Tom's I think I commented to you before, Dave, is Tom is forever the teacher, and he very much wants to be involved here. Mm-hmm. Our gyms are always open. Coaches are always welcome to come to see what we're teaching, how we're teaching it. I think there's I know as I was doing the National Excellence Program identification camp, every single provincial association was keen to have me out there doing coach education as well.
Cool.
So we're trying to tie everybody into the National Federation and what we're doing. It's not going to be instant. It's going to be, a slow process, but I think we're taking the right steps forward here. Yeah. I think Tom's been really open and really has mentioned this is a real priority for us. So through him and me, who's here full time, we want to link in with as many provincial associations and share some information for each provincial association. We've made, our technical keys available, and we want that to get through to the coaches as well.
Right.
I think there's a lot of moving parts here, but I think that's a start.
Yeah, and I think that the connection between club and the national team has been exceptionally better since Tom's been a part of it. And I know the kids were, the young ladies were signing autographs for kids at the nationals in Richmond, not this year, obviously, the year prior, last year. And I know, on the men's side, Glenn Hogue is pretty much an open book. So regarding everything that he does. And, but yeah, I think we're heading in the right direction. I mean, stuff like this is just a great way to get all of us coaches united, no matter what province we're in. So, yeah.
And one of the things I always say with coaches is, we have the information, we want to share the information, but come to us. If you have questions, ask us, reach out. Like, I'm happy for anybody to reach out to me any stage, ask questions. I'm sure Tom's the same. He probably has a little less time than I do, but reach out to us as well. Don't we're doing our best to make sure everybody has the information that we're sharing. But if you're not getting it, don't complain. Come and ask us. Come and reach out to us. Like we want to share. We want you in our gyms. We want you learning. We want to get on the same page as much as possible.
For sure. Okay, I have a question for you. Is you went from Canada to Australia, back to Canada. When you went to Australia and got that head coaching position, was there any like aha moments where you're like, wow, things are just different here? And how did you adapt, volleyball wise?
My majority of my coaching's been in Australia, so
okay.
It was probably more coming back from Australia to Canada. I think some of the things that really benefited me in Australia was that we didn't have as much of a budget as we do in Canada. I don't think volleyball is as popular as it is in Canada. There's not as many opportunities to learn and grow as a coach as there is in Canada. So I think we had to do a lot of jobs in Australia. Like I had to, even as a head coach of a national team, I had to sometimes pack the physio bag to make sure our physio needed what he needed. I was really involved in stats and statistical analysis and the scouting reports. So that equipped me with the skills that benefit me now as a coach. And, having a smaller budget, having less athletes to work with, and maybe, not as many athletes across the country, I had to be really solutions focused. Okay, how can we do this? How can we think outside the box? And I think that's benefited me in Canada, because it's not so much of, I'm not interested in how we can't do something at all. In Canada, all I can see is possibility. That's all I can see right now. And I think that's partially, because of my experience in Australia. But early on, coaching in Australia, coming from a player straight to coaching, I was really influenced by my own playing experiences. And I mean, it's who I was as a coach back then. But I look back now and go, geez, like, what was I thinking? You coach as a when you're a player, not everybody has your experiences. And I coach thinking, that's how I want to be coached. But not everybody's me, and not everybody has the same values and beliefs as me. So once I realized that, there's actual, science to this coaching, and I need to learn some things, and then working into a sport with, leadership and coaching professionals. It was an amazing learning experience, and I'm really, really grateful for my time there. But I think I've grown a ton since my early days of coaching.
For sure, and I think most coaches would relate to that. Who have coached for a long time, looking at how society changes, how the sport changes. Different tactics on getting the best out of your player. So this goes into the next question from Mr. Ryan Marsden out here in Olds. And junior national team, I think, as well, was his plan this summer until it all went to crap. But how is your family adjusted to coming back to Canada? Do we have you for the long term? Good question, Ryan.
My whole family is Australian. My kids were born and raised. I mean, they're young still. They're still 5, 7, and 9. It's been really, really hard. Yeah. My husband's still not able to work, and my children, they've all handled it differently. But it has been really hard. Like, it's been really hard. So sure. We're here. I have a job to do. I've got my eyes set on 2024 and beyond. So I expect to be here for a while. I hope it gets easier for my kids and my family, but right now, it's definitely not easy. Like, moving countries is not for the faint-hearted.
Nope.
And I don't know what I expected, but, I had one kid who just, was great. Life is easy for him. I had another who really struggles, making friends, and sure. Another one who was really missed home. And for the first 6 months, my husband was still in Australia, so it was a struggle, but, we like it here, and I think they'll eventually settle. For sure, and BC's beautiful. So I love anytime I have a chance to go back to BC, I'm there. I love BC. So, did you meet your husband in Australia? What? No, I met my husband on the Greek islands. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, right on. And then I lived in London for a long time, and then, he's Australian, and we lived 14, 15 years in Australia. Gotcha, okay. Glenn, he You owe me like a good 15 years here.
Yeah, fair enough. Good answer. Glenn Wheatley. You probably know who Glenn Wheatley is, one of the top refs in BC. Do you find it difficult transitioning from head coaching responsibilities into assistant coaching responsibilities? What are your long-term goals for your coaching career? Good open-ended question, Glenn.
Yeah. Yes, I find it difficult going from a head coach to an assistant coach. But I think I learned a lot about myself as a head coach while I worked in that space. I kind of learned what some of my assistant coaches struggled with when I was head coaching, and I think it's made me a better head coach because it is different. It is different. But I've enjoyed it. I think working with Tom's easy because you just know, okay, how much can I learn from this guy? I'm in a gym with Tom. There's so much for me to learn. So I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to learn as much as possible, and it's going to make me a better coach. I think I've always been really, really clear on what my job is from the very start. My job is to come in and coach Tom's systems and become an expert at Tom's systems,
right? And
make sure next gen is in line with what Tom wants with the A team. And then my job is to identify and produce as many top level athletes for the national team as possible. So because I'm really clear on my purpose, as much as, I had to play different roles at different times, I think I've always been really clear. I also have the added benefit of, I was an assistant coach for half the summer, but I was still head coaching in major competitions. I was a head coach at Pan Am Games and head coach at the Challenger Cup, Norseca Challenger Cup. And I was still running the B team trainings where I was the head coach. So I got to do both. And so while I got to struggle and learn in the space as an assistant coach, I also then got to still be a head coach in my own environment. But I'm grateful for being an assistant coach. I think it's going to make me much better managing my own staff, for sure.
Who is on your staff?
Right now?
Yeah.
No one? No. Last summer, Ryan Hofer worked with me all summer.
Awesome, yeah.
Jeff Ross worked with me as well.
Okay.
And then obviously I had a few different statisticians work with me. Danielle, who works with the men's senior B team. And then we have IST staff, Cody, I can't pronounce his last name, sorry Cody, and Misha are our IST staff who work with me full-time still this summer.
Question from, again, a legend in the volleyball world, Donna Sales. She's done so much for Volleyball BC and Volleyball Canada over the years and still probably does three people's jobs with Volleyball Canada. So her question is, and I think we touched on it a little bit earlier, but how do you see the NEP program fitting into the future?
Awesome. That's a really good question. I've always said that I think we need to, do more for our real priority athletes. Nothing about replacing what's already happening out there. We don't want to replace what clubs are doing. We want to supplement what's happening.
Sure.
And I think that we have a long way to go technically. So this is a way to put more into our top athletes to ensure that we get the technical development in line with the A team, and just supplement what clubs are already doing. Provide them with a higher level of competition early on. Provide them more international competition early on, so that now we have athletes who are going to good university programs, good college programs. They now have more international experience. So at the age of 22, when they graduate from their post-secondary, they have much more international experience. They're technically more advanced, and they're already in line with the national team. So I see the National Excellence Program as an early identification program, but also to provide that early technical development and international experience. But I also want to be clear, there's not just one pathway to the national team.
Sure.
If you're not selected to the National Excellence Program, it doesn't mean you're not going to play for Canada. We still want to make sure that we're still looking at this large group of players, this large base of players. Yes, the top 16, or we hope the top 16 are working with us full time for 4 months out of the year, but we're still looking at all those athletes who are playing club, all those athletes who are playing provincial team, and we want to make sure the provincial associations, the clubs, are still doing the awesome work they've been doing. We're just trying to supplement what they're doing.
Right, fair. Jeff Anderson from Red Deer, he runs a club in Red Deer called Queens. Also a board member with Volleyball Alberta, great guy. Tom said that serve pass is the largest area to build with our Canadian girls. What are your top 2 drills to incorporating incorporating, building these?
Yep. Yeah, I agree with Tom. Like serve and pass, especially pass, like we're quite a ways behind other countries. You know, I'm sure Tom's already hit on this as well. Like, you know, serve and pass is not that complicated. My top drills are passing off a live server.
Fair.
We add a scoring component. Sometimes where we'll have servers versus passers. One of my favorites is you have 3 passers on either side of the net with servers, however many you have left on either side of the net. And the servers from both sides are on one team, and the passers from both sides are one team. And you're alternating serves from side to side. And you've got to pass 3 good in a row as passers to get 1 big point. And the servers, you have to get them out of system or ace them 3 times in a row to get 1 big point. And the first team to 1 big point wins. If you want to keep them even warmer, you can have the servers jog and change ends after every serve. So that's one of my favorites. But I really think that servers and passers need to be facing live passers and live servers as much as possible.
Yeah.
I think they also need to hear the whistle as much as possible. And for servers, they need to be facing like 6 people on a court, not just 3 passers. So really about finding the balance. I think quite often with serving particularly, we just have athletes work on serving, but they're not serving with anybody on the court. So, you know, as much as possible, get them against, 6 players on the court, or at the very minimum 3 passers so they can see the seams. So that's one of my favorite drills. I think there's a lot of different scoring variations that we do.
Yeah.
And see with serving, we do serving ladders a lot. That's a really big one. That's probably a mainstay of our practice. And obviously getting the serve guns out to start looking at velocity as well.
Do you do obviously serving's incorporated into a lot of things, but do you have it like 3 times during practice that you're really, concentrating on serving, maybe at the start, middle, end, or is it just kind of incorporated through everything that you do in your practice plan?
Yeah, it varies. It definitely varies. So there'll be some days that we have, every day we'll have a serving focus, but some days we'll have more of a serving focus. And you could have ladders. We may have days that we work with the guns and we're looking at velocity. Serve and pass is also a huge focus of our individual skill work.
Yeah.
That's where we can really slow it down and get the video out, and passers can really view themselves, and servers as well, and check out, where they're contacting. Are they on their serving line? Passers, they can look at their movements. So we do a lot of individual skill work based around serve and pass.
Okay.
But serving is very much a focus of serve and pass is very much a focus of every practice, sometimes at the beginning, sometimes at the end.
Okay.
Working with Joe Treasy this summer, we talked a lot about, okay, if we do serve and pass, you get the girls are all warmed up, they're firing, and then you go to serve and pass, and it almost causes like a little bit of a lull at training. So we talked about once you get them going, you get them scoring, well, maybe we finish training with the serve and pass, and I really liked how he did that. He did that at the end of training. He did a serve and pass focus, and so I'm sort of switching between the two.
Okay. Kelvin Ma from BC, great up and coming coach. Sorry, I just aged you, Kelvin. Okay. You spoke about your experience with scouting. What are you looking for when you scout? I think you touched on it, but we can touch on it a bit again. And then it's how much do you present to your team before a match? 2-part question.
Great question.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm looking at a wide range of things. I want to know what their middle blocker does when our setter has the ball. Do they follow the ball? Do they stay neutral? I want to know what their setter does when they're pulled forward. Are they a long ball setter? Are they a short ball setter? So I'm going to look at those things. I'm going to look at the tendency of hitters. Like we use heat maps. So where's their go-to? Where's their power shot? Like where's their, do they tip or do they roll it all? Then we're going to look at tendencies and rotations. Do they have a favorite hitter? What's the spread like? And then if there's any kind of any weird plays or combinations we need to be aware of. Those are probably the main things we're looking at when we're scouting. I think there's a lot of work that goes into it as coaches, and the players don't realize how much work goes into it.
Fair.
What we're presenting to players, I think, has to be really relative to the level that you coach. The level, what we present to the senior national team is not something I maybe present to, if I'm working with the NEP athletes. I think learning to read a scouting report and how to process it and retain the information and play in that space is a skill that athletes need to learn. It's
Sure.
something as coaches we can help them learn. But at our level, the senior national team, we present them with obviously quite a bit of information. They'll get information on each player, like how we're going to block them, how we're going to defend them. We're going to talk about each rotation. We're going to have serving targets. We're going to talk about how we're going to score as hitters. So how can we score against this block? How can we score against this defense in each position? And then the setters will get additional instruction, have strategies on how they're going to score. Are they going to be able to run an isolation against a middle blocker, or how's the overload going to look? So there's a wide range of information. I think it really has to be relative to your level.
Sure.
It should be, even if it's just as little as like you're working with 16-year-olds and you say, hey, our serving target is going to be position 1, or we're always going to serve at the front court pass hitter. That's a game plan. Mm-hmm. So teaching an athlete to follow a game plan. How do I take this information? How do I remember it? What does it mean to me in a game? That's a skill, and I think that at all levels we should have some aspect of that in our coaching.
Totally agree. Great answer. Jay Tremonti, awesome guy, technical director at Volleyball BC. Question here: how would you describe Canada's women's national team style of play? What will Canada be known for at Paris 2024? Good question.
It's a really good question.
What's the answer?
I think it's clear we want to play fast. I think that's clear. Our offense is fairly fast. I think that we want to have a multi-zone offense, and we're able to run multi-zones at the same time at a very fast speed.
Right.
I think we want to be known as aggressive serving team.
Mm-hmm.
And while Tom will tell us that blocking is the least important skill in women's volleyball, I think this year we've made some huge improvements in blocking, and I think that's a huge win for us as well.
Okay, great.
So what our style looks like in Paris 2024,
yeah,
I would say it's very much in line with what you're seeing Tom build at the moment, which is that fast offense.
Okay. Hugh Bartlett, how can we keep our best players representing our country? How much of an issue is funding? Good question.
You know what? From my perspective,
yeah, I
don't think funding is that big of an issue.
Okay.
I really don't. I think we have to do better with what we have. And I think we can do better with what we have. And I think that we are doing better with what we have. How do we keep our athletes in Canada? We need to keep them engaged. We need to care about our athletes. We need them to know that we care. They need to know that we're invested in their professional careers. We're invested in their development. We want them to learn. We care about them as human beings. And, I think we're doing that. I think it's about, athletes knowing that they're part of something bigger and that there's buy-in. Like, I think it's those human qualities that I think that are really important, and we need to start valuing our athletes as people. And I think Tom does a great job of that in Canada. But this year alone, I know there's probably not one athlete in the program who wouldn't feel like they're a part of something bigger, and that I think that's how we keep our athletes in Canada. I think what's really an important piece to the national team as well is, how do we keep them engaged while they're at university and while they're at the NCAA and at U Sport. I think that's really important. That's something that we're working towards. How do we make sure, athletes are thinking about our program as a 12-month program, not a summer program? Yeah, for those 12 months, 8 of those months you're spending with a professional club or with a U Sport or college team, but this is a 12-month program. Everything you do every single day is a step towards the goals that we're trying to achieve as a national team. And changing that mentality is going to take time, but it also requires us to put in the effort of communicating with our athletes, monitoring our athletes, watching their video, checking in on them. Yeah, keeping them engaged. To be honest, it's just about building good relationships.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's oversimplified that.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I'm not sure if you've come across it, but you're dealing with, the younger and the up and coming. There's a lot of talk, and I know there's lots of great high school coaches. So please, I don't want to get bombarded with messages of hate here. But, there's a lot of clubs that are pushing a 12-month system where you're playing in a club for 11 or 12 months. What are your thoughts on that? This is a pretty open-ended question on this one. Have you come across that, as you travel the country? I know every province is a bit different, and there's different expectations depending on the province.
I'm still very new to the game here with the club system. I mean, I'm a year in Canada, and I've really spent this last little bit working through the provinces and the clubs. But I know Ontario runs their club system almost year long, or they run it through the fall and winter as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that kids, number one, I think kids need to play a range of sports.
Amen.
Just because the club system goes year round doesn't mean they can't play other sports. So I don't think we should automatically assume that means they're not going to be playing basketball, they're not going to be playing soccer. I don't think that's it at all.
No.
And I think it's really important that athletes are playing at the highest level that is available to them. And for a lot of them, that is through club, and club does offer a lot of opportunities to play down south and play at a higher level. So
Sure.
I'm not against that at all. So I think it really depends on what you're offering. But yeah, if an athlete wants to play club year round, go for it. And if they want to play beach, awesome. If they want to play some basketball, fantastic.
Yeah.
Play as much as you can at the highest level you can, but play lots of things.
So what age group do you think that, players should be starting to kind of focus on one sport? Where they think that, okay, I want to play post-secondary, volleyball or whatever sport it is. Is it grade 11 that they should start, schoolwork gets, more intense, sports get more intense, and, just every life gets more intense. So, is there a magic number on when kids should be, focusing on one or the other?
Yeah. I think that us as coaches, we really want to have this really clear black and white answer, and I'm going to give you the most gray answer ever, but it really depends on the athlete.
Sure.
It really does depend on the athlete. It depends on the athlete's interests. I mean, for me, I loved playing a million different sports, and I personally probably would have burnt out if I only played volleyball. So it really depends on the athlete. It depends what they want to do, where their interests lie, what they want to achieve. But I would say the young ages, like below 14 or 13, they definitely just need to have a good time. Our job is to make sure they love our sport and that they want to keep playing our sport. After that, they need to start to develop a skill and maybe get good at a few specialties. So get good at a few different skills, sure. But if they want to keep playing other sports, keep playing other sports. And eventually when they get to post-secondary, of course, they're most likely going to have to pick. I mean, there's some dual sport athletes out there. Yeah. But I just think so often we want to be really clear, like they need to be playing only volleyball at 15. Show me the proof. Show me the evidence. I don't have it. And if anybody's telling you they have it, I'd love to see it. I'm just saying, let the athlete decide what they want to do. And, make sure that we see ourselves as a resource. We're there to help an athlete achieve their goals, and we're there to, make sure we're the best we can be as coaches so that we're a resource to them. But if they decide to do other sports and they want to play more, when they're 15, 16, then so be it. It's up to them.
Yeah, and I feel on a volleyball side, and I'll generalize here as coaches, we're usually pretty good as volleyball coaches to let kids have an opportunity to play other sports. The ones that we come across the most is when, it's like, oh, I'm playing basketball, coach, but the basketball coach is not being as accommodating as we are. It's like, oh no, it has to be basketball or softball. Those are the two that really, those coaches, and again, I'm just generalizing here, but it's every single coach that we've had on here, it's all about multisport, so with that being said, go ahead.
Think about the athletes that end up coming to us at a later age. Like, obviously, I've only been in Canada a year, and I haven't, worked in that space a long time. But I know in Australia, a lot of the athletes who are coming to us are 16, 17, 18 from basketball, from soccer, from netball. It's because someone made them specialize and told them they couldn't do anything else.
Yeah, agreed.
So, I mean, by us encouraging an athlete to do what they're happy doing, and then I think, it looks like we're accommodating. We're not. We actually have the best interests of the athlete. And if an athlete's going to play at the next level, I think they'll choose a sport that they have a really positive relationship with.
Totally agree. Tatiana Markic has another question here regarding yourself. After you graduated university, how did you begin your overseas career? What was the process like?
Well, I don't think I ever planned on being overseas. Like, I just met a guy, and I ended up in Australia, and I was playing, and I never really intended to coach. I did a little bit of coaching here or there for, clubs and, as players do to make some extra money.
Yeah.
And then when I had after my first child, I was still playing National League in Australia, and I had my second, and it was actually the team manager from the Australian national team who just kind of tapped me on the shoulder and goes, "I've started a rumor you're going to coach National League." And I was like, "Oh, okay, do you really think I can?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think you can coach National League." And I mean, maybe I had a little bit of luck on my side. In my first year, we went from, second to last to winning 4 national championships. But I had some early successes. And when I started coaching with Mark Barnard, he was really supportive of my development. And when he decided to stand down, he obviously recommended I apply for the job. So when I started coaching Australia, I really didn't have a ton of head coaching experience. I'd maybe been a head coach for about 4 or 5 years. So it was really people tapping me on the shoulder going, I support you. I think you have what it takes. So I know for me as a coach, that's really important to me, making sure that I support young coaches coming through and that, I back the ones who I think have a lot of potential.
Awesome.
That's how I got my start. And then my job brought me up to the Australian Institute of Sport, which professionalized what I do. I realized, wow, I'm a full-time coach. I need to see this is a professional career. How I approach it needs to be professional. So all the upskilling, education, mentoring, it was a steep learning curve.
For sure.
One I very much value, and I look back when I'm just like, wow, I was in the right place at the right time, and I was surrounded by some awesome people who wanted to see me do well. So that was really cool.
So on your playing side, did you have like an agent that you relied on, or was it kind of word of mouth that got you playing overseas?
Yeah, so for me, I played club in England, so you didn't require an agent for that.
Okay.
This is a long time ago. I'm probably a lot older than people realize. But for our athletes now who are interested in playing overseas, yes, they can sign with an agent. I always encourage athletes. Number one thing is just like going for an NCAA or a college scholarship. You need to have your footage and get it online, so a highlights footage or a full set in game as well. And then get it out. Like start emailing coaches and clubs saying, I'm looking for a contract. I'm from Canada. I'm looking for a contract. I want to play overseas. And I go out to those clubs. I encourage players to go out to those clubs themselves as well as work with agents.
Mm-hmm.
So work hard for yourself is what I recommend.
Great answer. I'm going to screw up the last name, so we'll just call him Patrick. Patrick L. Middle blockers being taller and taller. I notice it has become harder to score on a 51. What other first tempo sets do you need to work on to counter that?
Okay. We run a gap as well. You can move your middle blocker around on a first tempo set, so you can do your 1 foot or 2 foot behind, your 51 in the middle, your gap, or your 31. So you just, I would argue that the middle blockers, if they're tall in the middle, it doesn't stop you from running the 51. But maybe that's not an ideal set on the perfect pass. So when the setter shifted back to 2 or the setter shifted to 4, that's a great set. That's a really great set. But once again, it depends on what your oppositional middle blocker is doing. Are they staying neutral or are they following the ball? If they're a middle blocker who stays in the middle and your setter shifted, well, the 51's a really, really good set to run. But if they're staying in the middle and the ball's passed perfectly in the middle, not a great set to run. So maybe that's when you run your 31 or your step behind. So it really depends on what that middle blocker is doing when the ball's moved around with the pass. I think if you can establish a true first tempo 51 and a decent speed outside, you don't need anything else. Agreed.
You see more shorter middles, if you will, in post-secondary. But you also, on the club level here, we're seeing more middles going, well, I'm not going to make it at the high level. I need to move up to the outside. When do you feel, we talked about specialization in sport. What about specialization in position? When do you think is, again, it depends on the athlete, of course, but, when should players really be pushing, I want to be in this position because I want to go post-secondary and above?
Right. Yeah, I think you do need to probably start to specialize your position. If you want to be recruited, you need to know what position you want to be recruited for by that grade 11.
Sure.
So I'd say 15, 16, you're starting to specialize. I do think we get in the habit of specializing too soon.
Agreed.
And I even say the kids that I'm going to be working with, or the athletes I'll be working with at the National Excellence Program, who are 16 and 17 years old, we've recruited them on positions. But I promise you, every middle blocker, every opposite, every outside is learning to pass and is going to pass. Because the reality is that they may go and play. Look at Shannon, who plays for the national team. She went to Florida as a middle blocker. She eventually developed an opposite, and now she's an opposite for the national team. So I think there has to be a certain level of specialization to enable them to be recruited for positions and for coaches to see how they fit into their programs and their lineups, but not to the stage where they're only working on, attacking and blocking as a middle. Middles also need to serve. They also need to be able to pass a free ball. They need to out of system set. So we sometimes take that specialization too far, but positional specialization, I'd say probably around 15, 16, they should be pretty clear on what position they're going after.
Okay, now this is a loaded question, so bear with me here. You have a grade 12 athlete that is good enough to go play pro overseas, or maybe does 1 year of university. What are your thoughts on players leaving post-secondary early to go experience the world? I mean, life lessons and all that. I mean, this is a double-edged sword. But I know that there have been athletes in Canada that have cut their university career short to go explore different playing experiences around the world.
There are so many moving parts to that question. Number one, what does the athlete want to do? Okay, what does the athlete want to do? What are their career aspirations? Is it something that they can study for while they're playing pro overseas? Where do they sit on the pathway for the national team? How far away are the Olympics if they are a potential athlete for an Olympic team or an Olympic qualification? So there's so much to be considered there.
Sure.
But if an athlete wants to go and play overseas and they want to pursue that, school is always going to be there.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in, an athlete throwing away everything to go play volleyball, but school is going to always be there. So Sure. They can very much return to it. And as a national team coach, if it's in line with what the athlete wants and we can still work towards their other career aspirations while they pursue a professional career, then I would encourage them to play at the highest level they possibly can. So there's so many answers to that
Sure.
question. It really depends on the athlete and what their goals are and where they're at. But I don't see it as a negative thing at all. I see it as something that could be really beneficial to the athlete. And like I said, university is always there. They can always come back to it.
And I think some pro teams, you could, you do online schooling and whatnot as well,
most
right?
Most athletes study online. Most athletes who even have a degree, they start their post-grad online.
Right.
They do supplement their education. They have actually a lot of time on their hands as professional athletes. So just because, right now, what are we all doing? My kids right now are, studying online at 5, 7, and 9. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll send them to Europe to play professionally. But it doesn't mean it's not always a one or the other. Like I said, we really always want to be black and white. It's not black and white. It doesn't have to be a one or the other. It has to be the right fit for that individual.
Sure. Okay. Brenda Chin, following up on your comments, coaching progression and support from others. How would you encourage other women in coaching? Great question.
Yeah, I think that the reason why I've progressed in coaching and I've been able to stick with coaching is because of the support around me. So I really value, having the right staff around me, the staff that obviously are going to support me and, let me be real and let me be genuine and let me be vulnerable, and they're not going to hold it against me. That's really important to me for staff. Me finding and identifying a mentor is really, really important. In Australia, I had phenomenal mentors that supported me through every stage of my coaching journey. They helped me through some tough times. I was able to emotionally unload on them. They were able to give me some great advice. They were invested in my professional development. So they had to help me identify opportunities. They were just a huge support. And when I got an offer from Team Canada, they were the first people I called and sat down with and talk about, do I take this? Do I not? And then coming to Canada, I've obviously been really lucky to be hooked up with Alice McNeil from the basketball world, who's been mentoring me. So for me, that's been really important and absolutely invaluable. And I've encouraged every female coach out there to know your support system, to really honestly evaluate your support system. Are they your people? Are they really your people? And then identify who could be your people. And it's not just people who are, they don't have to be within your same sport. They don't need to be higher level than you. It just needs to be someone who's going to back you, who's going to hold you accountable, who's going to keep you honest, and really, you know, challenge you to really progress through your career. I think it's been really, really important for me to find those people, and I've been lucky. But I've also had to be wrong a few times to get it right.
Fair. So who are your mentors in Canada?
Well, obviously, I've been teed up with Alison McNeil, Volleyball Canada, and, you know, Mark, our CEO, has been super supportive of my development when they've brought me into this role. It was really important for them to support me, and they teamed me up with Coaching Canada, who put me in touch with Alison McNeil, who, if you don't know, is a former national team coach for Basketball Canada, and she's just a badass. And so I touch base with her, I email her, we talk, and when I have an idea, I run it by her. One of my mentors, and actually a couple of my mentors in Australia, I'm still very much in contact with. Sue Jenkins, who works at the Institute of Sport, who's actually works with coaching development specifically and was one of my assistants. And, you know, Tom Black is someone I'm learning from tremendously. I rely heavily on other women, other really strong women. My best friend, Michelle Collins, works for sport in Vancouver, City of Vancouver. Chrissy Benz, who used to work with Volleyball Canada, and Donna Sales, like really strong women who just don't let me get away with anything and like hold me accountable. And, you know, when I have really bad days, I can just be absolutely vulnerable and genuine, and I just know it's never going to leave that room. That's really important. So I've got a lot, and I don't think it has to be one person.
No.
I think every mentor and every support fill different roles.
Sure.
So really identifying those people has helped me. And, you know, I'm happy. I hope that I can fill that role for other people as well. And
I'm sure you do, you know, and I'm sure you will. So you're definitely an inspiration to a lot of us that are coaching in volleyball. Glenn Wheatley, do you have a coaching philosophy, and how often do you modify it?
All the time. Like I'm forever thinking about this, because this is like, it's such a big word, philosophy. I'm like, wow, that seems like way more important than it's a huge word. I think my philosophy, as it's changed over time, has always been based around these ideas of, like, obviously hard work and accountability and honesty. I think it's really important to be honest, even when it's difficult. But recently, over the last few years, I've really realized the importance of creating an environment where athletes can be absolutely fearless.
Sure. And
I say fearless, meaning they can try new things, they can push the limits, they can get it wrong. But for them to be fearless, we have to build a certain level of trust. And that trust comes from, you know, me showing I care, and I care, but I need to show I care. I need to be able to communicate with them well. We need to be accountable. We both, athletes and staff, need to do the things that they say they're going to do for us to start to trust each other. And when I know that you're showing up in the gym with the best of intentions, that you're always going to work hard, and you do the things that you say you're going to do, then, man, make every error in the world. Like, be fearless. Let's create. Let's push boundaries. Let's make some horrendous errors, but let's make some aggressive errors. And so I really value that importance of creating this really fearless environment. And that comes down to, you know, what Tom talks a lot about being good learners. What does a good learner look like? And a good learner isn't always successful. A good learner has a really healthy relationship with failure and errors. And that's what I want in my gym. Like, I want you to come in and go, man, Shannon wants me to be aggressive. Like, Shannon wants us to play this really aggressive style. That means we're going to play some bad volleyball at times, but I know I'm going to be allowed to work through it. And she's not going to punish me and yell at me when I'm making these errors. We talk about what are the good errors to make in our gym and what are the incorrect errors to make in our gym. But yeah, I think I just rambled. But that's
no, not at all. You know, and I think that's something that Ben Josephson does really well with his men's team. Is it's like, get creative, you know, and there's no boundaries. It's, you know, try new things, explore and stuff like that. While there's certain other, you know, and there's other coaches that are set in their ways, and there's like, you got to do it this way. You know what I mean? So, and I think more creativity,
like,
right?
I know what my intention. First of all, Ben does that extremely well. I went into his gym before COVID, because I'm like, you have such a unique environment, and just seeing Ben in his element, he is exceptional at this. Yeah. But I guess when I look back at, you know, what my intentions are as a coach, sometimes I get it wrong with my actions. So I have to really then evaluate, like, I want them to be fearless. Well, what did I do there? I'm like, well, that doesn't really encourage them to be fearless. Okay, I've got to stop doing that. I've got to find a new way to do that. So as a coach, yeah, you need to know your philosophy, but you really have to have this ability to be self-reflective and develop this self-awareness where you can be honest with yourself and go, okay, am I really acting in a way that's in line with my philosophy? How can I be better at that? And I think that's where I'm always working every day. Like, I still mess up, so.
Fair. Regarding, kids playing multi-sports, athletes playing multi-sports, going from a school program to a club program to university, how do you work with conditioning and, injury prevention? I know Carrie McDonald's the master at this, but what sort of things do you do to keep conditioning high and keeping injuries low? Now it's from Tatiana.
Thank you. Okay, I obviously work in high performance, so I do have a lot of things that are available to me that probably aren't available to just a normal coach. But
Sure.
Coming through the Australian Institute of Sport, we are heavily taught about load management.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely a coach who's well versed in load management. I want to know. I think that I work athletes hard, but I have to work them hard safely.
Sure.
So it's about building them up to a level that they can train at a high level and sustain that without injury.
Mm-hmm.
And then also then being really understanding of when there are going to be maybe a break in training. How do I manage that in a way that's safe so that when we return to training, they can do that in a safe way. I think I'm about to have a visitor here. Sorry.
No, it's all right.
Give me a minute. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
Okay, just a sec. Go away. Sorry.
That's all right.
So if I'm looking at an athlete who's training across multi-sports, or I want to be really aware of what they're coming from. So maybe they're coming out of a basketball season. How much are they training basketball? How often? What does that look like? How many hours? What's the intensity? So that I have a really realistic view of where their levels are currently at, and then I can better plan training to suit that. And then if I'm going to increase them, I'm going to increase them slowly. There's a whole science behind it, and like
Sure.
I said, we have a lot of monitoring devices available to us to help us do that. If I was to do it, if I was a high school coach or a club coach, and I've never been, so I can appreciate there's all kinds of things I'm just not aware of. I think that I would want to just be aware of, what they're currently doing.
Fair enough.
Can you go see Dad?
You're going to become an internet sensation, Shannon.
So I might have lost train of thought for a minute there, because he's like talking, he's dancing, he's doing he's doing all kinds of things behind me. But I'm going to multitask.
Sure. Well,
this is my youngest.
Well, you got to do an introduction now.
Yeah.
Anyways, you know what? We're coming up to that 1 hour mark, and I know you got a lot of other things going on. So, I appreciate. I'm not cutting you off because your kid's there, but honestly, we're out of questions here, and I want to thank you for your time. Is there any kind of final thoughts? There's a lot of people watching right now. Any final thoughts to the coaches?
I think just for coaches, we always encourage our athletes to, I always encourage our athletes to be in control of their own development and
Sure.
to make that their priority. And I love that you have created this initiative to connect all the volleyball coaches across Canada. And I just encourage all coaches, reach out to other coaches, go sit in their training sessions, ask them questions, reach out to, coaches in your provincial team and club team, every level. I learned so much just from I go to Ducks training and work with the Ducks coaches.
Mm-hmm.
I learn from them as much as they learn from me.
Sure.
So put yourself in other people's environments and don't be afraid to do that and ask a ton of questions. I mean, that's the only way we're going to learn. So I love this whole initiative, and I love that everybody's so engaged with it. So I'm very, very, I'm very proud to be Canadian, coming back home and seeing how willing everybody is to share in Canada.
Awesome, Shannon. Well, we're glad to have you back here in Canada. We look forward to seeing everything that you do with our national team program, and wish you health and safety during this COVID time.
Awesome.
Right
Thanks,
on.
guys. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. All right, that was Shannon Winzer from the national team program. I could have talked to her for probably another 3-4 hours. So thanks for tuning in today. On Friday, we have Jesse Knight. He's done some coaching in Canada. He's coached in the U.S. and also coached in overseas. So the main focus for that conversation will be just the differences between, U.S., Canada, and international training. So thanks for checking in. Another update is that anyone who ordered clothing the Pure Later is dealing with whatever during this COVID time. So they're supposed to be going out next week, and that's through Volleyball stuff. And I just want to thank all the coaches for buying the clothing. We've raised over $700 for the Mustard Seed Calgary. So that will go to Mustard Seed as soon as this COVID thing is done with. And hope to see you guys all on Friday. Talk to you later.